Good day. I am Kevin Weitzel of Outhouse, and I have with me,
I'm Greg Bray with Blue Tangerine.
we are the co hosts of the Home Builder Digital Marketing Podcast, which many of you are all listeners on. And we are also the co hosts of the Digital Marketing Summit coming up in September 21st and 22nd, right here in sunny Phoenix, Arizona. One little note, we are going to be giving away door prizes at the very end, so make sure you stay tuned until the end. We're giving away a Retro 51 pen. We are giving away a House That She Built book, as well as an activity book to go along with it. And on top of that, we are giving away one complimentary registration to the Builder Marketing Summit. Woohoo! All right. So just a pinch of housekeeping. If you have any questions or comments whatsoever, please use the chat. Myself and Greg will be monitoring that. So if there's any questions in there that we can pepper in, we'd be more than happy to do so. And I guess let's introduce our esteemed and honored guest here that we are honored and privileged to have on with us, Terry Slavic Suyuki of TST Inc.
Thanks, guys. Good morning, everybody. And apologies,
Morning.
first of all, I fully lost my voice last week, as some of you may know. It's about 80% back today, but we're going to roll with it. So let's do it.
All right. So the whole idea of this, the concept of this really came through because I have struggled my life with being human. I've always been that guy that is kind of like the goofball, if you can't tell, the one that asks the crazy questions. No, but I've always been that person, and I've always struggled with industries that have gone away from including the human aspect of work. I'm the guy that hates online bill pay. I know it's convenient, but I hate doing it.
Yeah.
I'm the guy that hates self checkout for two reasons. One, the grocery store didn't employ me nor put me through any proper training, so I can't properly scan all those items. I don't work for them. And honestly, I like salespeople. I like the interaction of just dealing with a human. I don't like the teller and the automatic teller stuff. So that's just me. So when we went through our podcast interview with Terry, which I still to this day hold as my absolute favorite interview to date, because every bit of it just went right to the core of my soul. So that's when we decided that we were going to have on some other guests, and we'll be introducing them very shortly. But for now, let's go ahead and just have Terry get started, and I'll just try to keep my yapper as shut as much as humanly possible.
Awesome. So I have a few introductory remarks, and then you guys are going to introduce our guests that we're going to talk to, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
So you're about to hear, if you don't know these folks, this is truly an amazing group of creative thinkers and inspiring leaders in our industry. And I can't believe that I get to have a conversation about a topic that's near and dear to me. So, we live in an age of technology. More and better of it's created all the time to create efficiencies, make things happen faster, better, giving us access to more data and more information about people all the time. And the pandemic only sped that up. You've all heard the McKinsey data that we advanced, what was it, like 10 years and 6 weeks or something in terms of technology adoption. But we also live in an age of engagement. And I think people, all of us, crave more connections, more meaning, more authenticity than ever. We are all starving for community. And as our world speeds up, we've all talked about mental health and well-being becoming more important than ever. So it's a time of small batch, craft-made everything. And the one directional flow of marketing messages no longer cuts it, right? So when you push out content to raise awareness, generate interest, spark desire, and motivate action, that old templated form we all know about. So as these two ages, technology and engagement shape us, shape our world, our market economy, and how our customers show up, if we aren't super intentional, I think that they can be in conflict with each other. So with that as our level setter, Kevin and Greg, would you introduce our panelists, please?
Absolutely. We're going to start off with some of the most beautiful head of hair in the entire industry from DeYoung Properties, Ryan DeYoung. And you are muted, Ryan, just
I did not come prepared to be quite so dramatic in the introductions, Kevin. So I feel like it's like, I don't know, like the basketball announcers or something, right? But up next, we have Jordan Brown with K Hovnanian, and he's from their Dallas-Fort Worth area, if I got that right, Jordan. So welcome.
You got it.
And Jordan, your hair's great too. I'm just saying.
I appreciate it.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
That comes from, he was doing an announcement video of a new community and somebody in our office walked by and went, "Whoa, who's that? What's up with his hair? It's awesome." And I was like, and I was having one of my bad hair days, and I've just got done commenting about how wonky my head looks. Anyway, from Unscripted Interiors, we have Kate for Hassanian.
Hello, good morning. And you said my name right. Good job, Kevin.
Hey-o.
And last but not least, the one who's going to bring it all home at the end of the discussion is Elena Money Garman, the CEO and founder of Garman Homes, who I think needs no introduction. I think everybody already knows her. So welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Great. Well, this is awesome. So Ryan, Jordan, Kate, and Elena, let's roll. We have a few questions prepared. We had a good conversation last week. At least they all did when I couldn't talk. So let's see where this goes. So Kevin Oakley, who I admire greatly, wrote a piece earlier this year about the 3 stages of the home buying experience. And I know all of you are familiar with that: research, shopping, and purchase. And as we prepped for this conversation this morning, I asked all of you to tell me, in your humble opinion, which is best and least served by digital. Interestingly enough, you all agreed. And I'm fascinated by that. You all said that research and shopping were best served by digital, and that research and shopping were best served by digital, and that purchase was least served by digital. And that's kind of the place where we all felt we needed more connection or more interaction. So Ryan, I'm going to go to you first. I love that in the research stage, you talked about using digital tools for the customer's enjoyment. Can you tell us what you mean by that and why that's so important?
Yeah, when they're just starting that search and they're in their research mode, they haven't quite raised their hand yet to the builder and saying, "Hey, I'm really interested to learn more and I have questions I need your help to answer." They're just getting started. So, I mean, at that point, they're just gathering information. They're soaking information up on your website like a sponge. And there are so many tools that we as builders can help customers in that stage, whether it's just pictures and video tours and all the information that a lot of us have on our websites. But as the environment changes, financing education, we've even done podcasts just to be there for customers in the way they need you to be there for them at that moment in time.
Cool. And why is the enjoyment factor so important at this stage? Like how I mean, I love that word. I think that's really key. That's human, right? We want to have pleasure. We want joy in our lives.
Exactly. I mean, when you're just getting started, that's like the fun part. You haven't really, thought about the financing so much yet. And so, if we're talking medicine and sugar, that's definitely the sugar part of the whole purchase part of the equation.
Cool. I love that. And I think that's something to think about. So how can you bring joy into that shopping experience and differentiate yourself from others? And there's no one better to do that and who does it than my awesome dear friend, Elena. So Elena, how do you bring the human side of Garmin forward into that shopping and discovery experience that really positions you authentically as a totally different builder? I mean, there's no one in America that communicates the same way that Garmin Homes does. Tell us how you do that and how you use the power of story.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. It's super generous. What we try to lead, we try to go first, like Rhonda Conger says. I try to go first and be human and be as authentically myself and transparent as I can be. So from our copy on our website to the way we name our plans and the way we name our collections really is our attempts to find something or name something that resonates with the person who experiences us. So they find a moment of common ground and it sort of pulls them in one step. And then we start to tell the story about why we named our plans. Like we have a collection that used to be called Mixtape, showing my age here. It used to be called Mixtape and now it's called Playlist, but it was named 2 to 3 word song lyrics. Every elevation for every plan. I thought our trades would kill me, did not, but were named for different genres of music. And the most popular was Castle in Brooklyn from Beastie Boys' Brass Monkey. But when you name a plan after a Beastie Boys song, people are like, tell me more about who you are. and it's everything you do. It's, my contract paperwork had to match the tone as well, which our lawyers initially had problems with, but people got over. And I wanted to speak to people in plain English. I wanted them to feel empowered by our process and shopping and experiencing us. And I wanted to educate them and set really good expectations through not just love, but tough love. So they could feel empowered by the process and not intimidated. So yeah, our plan names are the primary way that we try to connect with people. Like we have our first over targeted 55 and older community, and our plans are named Meaning and Purpose. It's from the
Oh,
Intentions
cool.
collection.
That's
Uh,
cool.
because as you get as I age, I know that I'm whittling down what I spend my time on. I want things to have more meaning, more purpose, and so we try to connect with whoever is the target demographic.
I'm going to call it BS. Elena doesn't age. She doesn't.
Good.
As she ages.
You're hilarious.
Please.
But the contracts are written in rap. Is that what you said? Is that you can?
It's not a rap.
You can sing your contract. Is that?
But I'm going to
okay.
add that to the list.
Okay.
It's not a rap yet. But wouldn't that be fun if
Yeah.
it was
It
a
would
rap
be.
battle between like me and a sales agent?
But you know, honestly, Greg, one thing that is really an interesting thing in the Garmin contract, though, they have what's called a breakup clause. And I remember the story between talking with Elena and Jim about this some years ago, and Jim saying, like, sure, we can write a contract that's 50,000 pages long for every potential eventuality that could go wrong. But nobody wants to read that, and nobody wants to care that. And Elena, talk about how you're not managing your business to the lowest common denominator. Talk
Right.
about
Yeah, we build these genuine relationships with these buyers and their agents, and I didn't want to slap down a contract that recounted all the ways that we had gotten our business wrong and all the things we wish people knew. You can't, like, if you never go into a relationship, can you on a first date and being like, well, I'm going to go through the list of all the things I've gotten wrong before and all the ways that people have done me wrong. I mean, that's the way our contracts are in our industry are written. And so this contract was written in plain English so people can understand it. And we don't need to write it to the 1 out of 100 times that things go wrong. We need to write it for the 99 times it does and tell people only what they need to know so they actually read that part. If we inundate them with too much information, they glaze, they get none of it, and they're fully unprepared for what our expectations are of them as a good buyer. We also have a good attitude addendum. We also have a supply chain addendum. Those are the ones I want you to read, because the good attitude says I can give you your money back and you can go buy somewhere else if you're mean.
Wow.
And the supply chain addendum says something in your house is not going to be finished when we're able to close on it. And I can't tell you what it is. And if you're not okay with that, don't buy the house.
That's awesome. I love
You might
it.
have a white cabinet in your charcoal kitchen.
I'm fascinated by that. I want to hear, Ryan, how does that work in your world? How do you guys think about things like that?
You know, honestly, I think to the point that you're making, even having those tough conversations, that's human. And I think that, you know, our team, for example, we went through and we look back as to, okay, where have either we failed a customer or maybe they just simply had incorrect expectations in that we didn't coach them up early enough. And so we spent a lot of time. I mean, when we talked about all like digital and the human side of selling, a lot of it comes back to journey mapping and thinking, being thoughtful beforehand, you know, and thinking, okay, this is where they're going to need to be at this stage of the game. And, you know, if later on during the purchase process, you know that there's going to be an issue with, you know, supply chain or something, and you haven't talked about it before it occurs, then you've really put your customer to disservice. So I like having those tough conversations that are difficult, but you know, you get to think about what's the best way we can say it if you think about it beforehand versus in the moment. So we've done spent a lot of time and effort around that.
I love that, because one of the things that's so important, I think, I mean, when Kevin and I talked, one of the questions he asked me was, what is customer experience? And I answered it simply, it's pains and gains. And if you think about that, I think it clarifies all the smoke and all the fog, right? So our job is to understand customers' pains and find ways that our business can help alleviate them. Understand the gains they're all trying to achieve in their lives, because we all are, we're all human, and figure out how our product or our service can help meet those gains. You gave me a great pivot, Ryan, to Kate. You said you need to think about things beforehand. Kate has a unique position on this kind of conversation thread today, in that her job is to think about what your final buyers will want long term. And her job is to design spaces and places that show your customers that she's seen and heard them as humans, and that they feel like they can show up here and live their best lives. Kate, how do you do that?
Great question. No, a loaded question too. So I would say it starts internally. If anyone knows Unscripted, there are two benchmarks we stand by, which is good design and good humans. So that starts in the hiring process for us internally, because frankly, I can't teach those two things. I can't teach you how to have good taste, and I can't teach you how to have integrity. I can teach you a process. I can teach you, a system, and I think that that parlays into our customer experience, right? So to steal a quote from my hero, Simon Sinek, there is an acute difference between listening and waiting to respond. And so when we meet with our clients, it is an active process of gather and discovery, right? So it starts from that human space of, I'm giving this project dignity and honor and time. We're going to write a new story. We're not repeating what we've always done. We're not doing that plug, play, repeat template. And that I think is distinctive in our industry. I think we, in the efficiencies model, it's like, how can we do this thing again and again and again? But the loss in that is the lack of empathy and connection. I'm not really hearing you. I'm not really hearing what your objective is. So whether it's a builder, a developer, we also do custom residential, so consumer, business to consumer. So you talk about emotional, you talk about psychological. That is a full of feeling process. And I think the biggest space is for us to really pause and gather data. And then from the personal level, and then from that, it's, yes, there's market research and frankly, just digging in. We work in over 20 states. So doing research in those regions, those territories, how do people really live in those places? And then to empathize, put ourselves in those shoes. How would we want to live in that space? And we just have a really stellar team of good humans who value that. And knowing, ultimately, I'm piggybacking on what Elena said, if there's anything that this pandemic and lockdown has taught us, it's that time is our most precious commodity. So it's shifted. How do we spend our time? Am I willing to go travel for that opportunity? Am I willing to go into the office for that opportunity? Am I willing to do that in person or via Zoom? So if I'm actually going to have a meeting with someone, it has to be meaningful engagement. It has to be intentional conversation, but that requires vulnerability. That requires an awareness, acute awareness of who we are and what this opportunity is. And internally, we use a lot of psychometrics. You will know, Terry, I'm super engaged with the Enneagram community, but it's about self-awareness so that I know what I bring to the table and my own blind spots so that I can give my all to this opportunity.
I love that. I love a couple of things you said. First of all, listening actively, like really to hear, is super cool. But also the vulnerability piece, like that's really behind. I mean, when we talked, Kevin, and I said, well, just let your human show. And you like sat up and went, hold on. And even in your introductory comments today, right? Like nobody does that. We all feel like we need to be so polished and have everything just perfect. And we don't. We're all humans. We need to really embrace that, I think.
Yeah.
And I think if anything, the pandemic we just came through has taught us that we're good with imperfection. Like I said, I mean, I have a 10-month-old puppy under my desk named George. He's probably going to bark at some point on this webinar. Oh, well, like that's just life, right? So, okay, I need to go to Jordan because I think one of the things you said in your remarks ahead of our prep remarks before we got on the call this morning was really cool and relates to one of the big thinkers I really respect the most. And you said that builders who move further away from providing a human connection will make those who provide more of a personal experience more valuable than others. Talk about that and tell me how you're leading that team at KHOV to do just that, because I know you are.
Well, certainly, and such great content already talked about today. But I'm super passionate about this only because what better time than now, right now, to dive in and show your value and provide certainty and knowledge, and set yourself apart from anything else that's going on out there, because everybody is really craving that and we've already spoken to it, that authenticity and the ability to connect with everyone, and you can still set yourself apart. Now, there's not to say that there's not a space for AI. There's plenty of that. But dive in, get to know, if you're able to speak to financing, dive into that conversation with your prospect and your homeowner who's in front of you and provide that certainty and that transparency. The other thing is have those conversations, those hard conversations early and often, and be able to not be afraid to speak to, hey, listen, we're experiencing some things in the marketplace right now, and you will experience it too. Don't know what exactly, because everything's going to be a little bit different along the way. But I can assure you that I'm going to be here with you all along the way and make sure that we get through that together.
And you're finding that when you do that with home shoppers and home buyers, that really differentiates you and kind of helps you kind of rise above the commodity that's out there. Really, because we kind of live in a sea of sameness in some
Yeah.
ways, right? So you really, I think if you do that and connect, you're going to really feel different.
Yeah, and I'm not a huge fan of scripts. Don't kill me.
No,
But
you're
I am a
good.
big fan of structured sales presentations, and it's really important to listen, actively engaged with your prospective homeowner who's in front of you, and be able to pivot and sit back and say, "Hey, listen, there's a million things that I can talk to you about today, but I want to take a step back and I want to hear what's important to you. Let's start there, and then let's dive in."
Yeah, I love that. Like, give me a little space and air, right? Don't pummel me with all of your questions and all the stuff. And this, for me personally, and again, to Kevin's intro, this goes to the online experience too, right? When you just get pummeled by a chat bot asking you what you know are canned questions, and they don't give you the contextual time to actually say what your issue is, there's nothing more frustrating. Well, maybe there's one thing more frustrating. It's when I register on a builder's website in one market, and then I start getting pummeled by emails from that same builder for homes in another market because their corporate structure doesn't allow them to actually listen to what their customers told them, right? I mean, who's shaking their head here, right? That's happened to everybody. Hands up.
Everybody.
It's happened to everybody.
Yes.
You know it has. Yeah. Okay, so we talked a lot about video, and Ryan, you especially talked a lot about video in your introductory content around kind of helping your company feel more personal and more human. Video is great. It's still one-dimensional, right? You're still talking at me, and I don't get a chance to react and respond. Is there a solution to that? Is there something we can do that is more hybrid or more kind of multi-dimensional? Anybody? This is an open conversation for anybody. Ryan, you start.
Well, I mean, obviously, one-on-one, even if it's just on the phone, is probably better than just a video that's recorded and sent out. It is extremely helpful, no doubt. So I think the goal for our team is always to try and have that conversation, whether it's in person, number one, or over the phone, number two. But then probably a close second would be video tools along the way. But whether they're just starting out, they're actually shopping or they've actually purchased. Again, we kind of try and go back to thinking through where's that customer going to be at that moment in time. If they're shopping, maybe they don't really want to talk to, a person. So maybe sending out a video email with information about financing, where financing is today, that would be helpful to them at that moment in time. But getting them to come in and actually having them put forth their questions with the financing expert in person, and that's going to be even better if we can get into that place.
That's cool. And I like what you're saying, because the video kind of to save time. And again, I think that's probably also on the enjoyment level, right? If you can all create video that's on brand and specific to how you show up, I think that's even more exciting. I mean, you can create video that connects with people in a more empathetic human way, as opposed to just sort of the demonstration video talking to them. And I think that's a real opportunity.
Yeah,
Anybody else have an opinion on that? Elena?
Yeah, I'd love to interject a little bit on that in terms of just the variety of video and content that you add. I think Unscripted and Kate, her team, does such a great job on Instagram of just sharing moments. Like, video doesn't have to be fully polished, professionally produced.
Yeah.
It's capturing a moment, an energy, and sharing that with someone in video format on social, or if it doesn't live on your website, it lives on your social. And social is really where people, I think, get to know you and find evidence that whoever you say you are on your website actually lives somewhere on your socials. And so it's evidence that you are who you say you are. And so I would encourage lots of interaction with spur of the moment video. And I would do those like daily report check-ins from the American Home Concept Home, and I would laugh hysterically because people would send me screenshots and my hair was like a fuzzball. I never wore makeup. I was always sweaty, and people would be like, "This is hysterical. You were just like a wreck visually." But it was about the information and not being afraid to just let that human show. I mean, to be super on the nose, just let it out there.
Yeah, Elena, to piggyback on that, I just want to say, I think people's BS reader is at an all-time high.
Absolutely.
I think when you start with an "I don't know" or let me think about that. I mean, just the humanness of being honest for once. I think People value that. So I think the behind the scene content of reels and stories, I mean, you literally can commit to one platform like Instagram, and you don't even have to waste your time in like a TikTok and Snapchat.
Yeah.
Context. It's just one where they're trying to create this narrative of who are you really. Let's peel back that curtain, what's happening in real time, and it creates engagement that is completely authentic because it's spur of the moment. Like, I'm here, I'm on site, this is your home, this is being built in real time, this is happening. And it creates that human emotional connection that you can leverage, I mean, in a huge way, honestly.
Yeah, and nobody can make that up. Like,
No.
nobody else can be
No.
the four of you. Like,
Yeah.
every one of you, I mean, you are all unique, beautiful, awesome, imperfect human beings. Let that show. People care about that. Jordan, how are you guys doing this at KHOV? Talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, sure thing. So we're big believers in, hey, do a quick video snippet and catch people completely off guard, with a follow-up, and just catch them off guard with your information because they're not expecting it. I had an opportunity a long time ago, and this is going to be, I'm throwing myself in here, but I did a series on construction stages from start to finish, back Facebook Live, and it was wretched because you could hear all the wind, you could hear every other word. My hair was blowing. I'm pretty sure a piece of exterior sheathing blew and almost hit me in the face. But it was fun, and there was so much engagement because, people weren't expecting it. The little intricacies of what are brick ties, and let's walk through a home that seconds inspections, and, the stuff that people don't typically think about when they think of, the brand new sexy home, right? And so it's always trying to think about the little things that are going to set you apart, the consistency, the engagement, and the authenticity, just to let them know, hey, listen, we're thinking about you. Let's take the next steps.
And you let that show. Okay, back to you, Ryan. I'm fascinated by the customer journey mapping piece, and tell us how you have used digital tools, technology to understand those pains and gains along that journey.
Well, okay, so one of the things that we did was, it's a bit more focused on people who have already purchased, but I kind of briefly mentioned, where do we go wrong? Where do customers, I guess, fall off the train at some point in time? And so we looked at the entire purchase process from beginning to end and asked ourselves, all right, what are those low moments? What can we do for the customers at that time? And then how can we educate them about what are those low moments, just so that they know how to think about those as they come up. So we've had everything from a pre-construction meeting with our customers before the home starts, basically a sit down, and then we talk about the entire process, and not just their home, really telling them, in a sense, we started off calling it a customer inoculation meeting.
Oh,
basically
wow.
telling them, here's all the bad things, full Monty, basically. But what we also did was we used that as an opportunity to educate customers too. So just like Jordan, I got out there at the construction site. I'm out there interviewing every single trade partner there is. I'm on top of a roof, and I'm afraid of heights, and just educating customers. Here's how we, make sure your house is watertight, and just a ton of education. We hired a videographer really early on, and he always has so much more on his plate to do than we ever can get to, just because we're just pushing out as much video content as possible, whether that's one-to-one or it is maybe some of it is canned. But I think that's the point, is to try and figure out along the way, where can we educate, wow a customer, get them excited about certain aspects of construction, and then where can we humanize it as well? So you can have some of it as canned, but then some of it really needs to be there in person, because they're going to have questions along the way that you can't have recordings of everything ready to go.
Right, exactly. And is it fair to say that your content strategy, so that the investment you all make in certain video content, is it fair to say that that's driven by those customer inoculation meetings and finding out what their pains are?
100%. Yeah. So like if I'm meeting with stucco company and we need to educate customers, okay, what is a stucco crack? Is that a good or a bad thing? Is that going to make if I have a crack, is my house going to leak water? That kind of thing. So yeah, we're trying to figure out what are those things that can go wrong, that we have questions later on, and maybe we can educate them so that that question isn't a worry when it actually does come up.
That's cool. I'm going to throw an unexpected question at you, because I think where you're going is really interesting and inspiring to all of us. One by one, I'll start with you, Elena. Then I'll go to Kate. Then I'll go to Jordan and Ryan, because Ryan, you gave me the idea. What are your customers afraid of today? And how are you dealing with those fears?
Wow. Okay.
You've met me, right?
Yes. Yes. I should have known to expect this. What are they afraid of?
Hmm.
I think it's something there. This is what's first coming to mind. So I'm going to go with my gut is all the uncertainty.
Yeah.
I think we're always trying to set expectations to give them more certainty or the certainty they need that's commensurate with the seriousness of the purchase, the sacredness of the purchase, right? And but there's so much uncertainty that we can't even set expectations for right now. And it's the only constant, right? It's the only thing we can set expectations for is that something's going to come up that we're going to have to deal with together. And
Okay.
so, do you like me enough to weather this with me? Am
Yeah.
I the person you want on the other side of that, whatever we hit? So I think it's a layer of compatibility that we we haven't had to reach for in the past. It's been nice to reach for, but it's almost, are these the people that we want to be in business with when things get really crazy? And they have.
Awesome. Awesome. Kate, what about you? What fears are you seeing?
Okay, so I have a unique perspective because yes, some of my customers are your customers, but majority of our customers are actually you on the call. So
Right.
I would say what we have gone through the exercise of revisiting the sales experience. We design a lot of sales offices, welcome centers, sales opportunities, and we find that the biggest inhibitor is the sales teams not wanting to change. And their methodologies are tried and true. This is the way we do things. And I'm an outlier. I don't come from this industry. So I come from sales from international beauty brand. So I'm a very different perspective, and it's a very innovative perspective, honestly. And so I'm asking questions that I feel like are pretty standard, and I get a lot of pushback. So when we go through the due diligence of let's redesign this sales office, this sale garage, what should this feel like in this model merchandising opportunity? We go through the exercise and then we hit this wall because at the end of the day, we'd have to actually change how we do things.
Yep.
And so, Tara, you and I have talked at length about that, but I want to bring up a really key opportunity that I've experienced personally. I am not a car person. I'm just going to start by saying that. I like cars, but I don't know anything about that. I know that I have access to all things information. I can Google all day long. But if you think about like a slimy sales encounter, it usually it deals with cars, right? Like who wants to go to a car lot? No one. So in Colorado, they have this really beautiful service called car brokering. And I work with a gentleman who I give him all the ins and outs of things that I dream about in a car. Let's say I want a mid-sized SUV. I want this color. I want this detail. He does all the due diligence, all the research, right? He sends me that. And then he brings cars to me personally to test drive. So yes, there's a data portion where I'm getting information and I'm researching, but the sell happens when I'm behind the wheel, right? I'm having this emotional test drive experience. Also, he does my financing, and then he comes when the purchase is done, he brings the car to me and takes my other car away. I mean, and I brought this up over and over again. So I highly encourage move to Colorado, go through this experience because it's amazing. But I use this because people are like, that is amazing. Like, it's really not that different than any other sales model where the consumer is considered first.
Right.
The concierge experience. It's no different than if you go into an Apple store, Tesla, and these major brands. Why do we do so much research? Because they're doing something right.
Right.
And so when will we as an industry take note and shift? So I just posture that because I would say that change is the biggest inhibitor to development and growth here.
Yeah, and I think that's because we forget to think that we are human too. Like we kind of divide ourselves when we put our work hat on. We come in and we do things that are driven to deliver the results that we're all measured by, which are critically important.
Right.
But in so getting trapped in things from the inside out, we forget to think about that human experience.
Right. How would I want to be treated? How would I want this experience to happen? And so
totally. And I mean, back in the early days of kind of online and digital technology, I was involved in the design of a CRM system and strategy. And so often and too often, we were limited by what our IT department said was achievable and what was scalable and what could be managed. We were not focused on the outside in and asking ourselves, how might we actually do this to make the experience better? And I think sometimes those internal things, oh, well, it doesn't intersect, doesn't work with that, doesn't interact with that. That's a challenge, right? So Jordan, what are your customers afraid of? What's their top fear?
Yeah, sure. So to kind of stem off of something that Elena had alluded to earlier, I mean, really the only constant in our industry right now that we're experiencing is the inconsistency that we're experiencing. And
Okay.
so the whole idea is to listen, these buyers, most of them are on an emotional high the second that they make their purchase decision, right? Then they go home and they have conversations with family. They're reading headlines about the normalization of the marketplace. They're getting all of this third party information of the scare, the fear. It starts creeping in. And our role is to really focus on, listen, if this is the right home, this is the right time to buy. And if you're not going to do this and you're going to fall off, what's the other option? Are you going to go back to what you're trying to leave in the first place? And so the providing of certainty and making sure that they remember, why they're bettering their life, going this direction by hopping into the new home, that needs to be at the forefront of the conversation.
Awesome. Okay, well, Ryan, you started this. So what are your customers most afraid of today, and how are you dealing with it?
Well, I mean, to Jordan's point, they're talking to you for a reason. There's something in their life that's got them actually considering it. And sometimes in a bad market, it's still the right time to purchase a home for you. So I think, what comes to mind, I mean, it's very much along the same lines as Jordan is, you're there to provide certainty and confidence. I mean, if it is the right decision for them at that moment in time, that's all that matters. It's one home at a time. So I think that's one of the things that we get to enjoy the most in this industry is we get to change families' lives and providing confidence in maybe a treacherous period of time. It's actually kind of fun.
That's so cool. So I heard uncertainty, not willing to change, inconsistency, and then really providing confidence. Okay, so how do we do that, gang? How do we do that? Who's got the magic bullet? Is there a hybrid approach? What needs to work?
I think it's really getting to know each individual person and what their unique hot button is with their driving why. You need to get down to the why. And I don't think it's a consistent fit for every single person that we work with, and we owe it to them to partner and to get to know them to that level to, establish a baseline and to continue moving forward together.
Awesome. Well said. Anybody else?
Yeah, I want to piggyback on that. I think some of it is connected to emotional intelligence, like I brought up earlier. I think being able to read your audience, read your buyer, read your opportunity, and what we're seeing collectively is that this canned approach is never really working because we're missing that one-on-one dynamic. For me, I'm an extrovert. I'm a talker. I like people. I want to do this thing. I had the same conversation with some of my staff and they're introverted. So they may not want that might feel like pressure. That might feel like a lot, right? So how do we approach it to where we're considering the whole without isolating just one type of personality? So I think it's really, Jordan, you're spot on. I think it's one home at a time. It's one person at a time, and really empowering your team to read that space. And that's not something that we really spend a lot of energy on that we really should consider.
So how do you do that at scale using digital tools? How do you do, because what you're both talking about is finding the why, the one-on-one personal individual experience. Like One-on-One Marketing was a book written 20 years ago. And it was really at the beginning. I mean, Kevin, you and I are old enough to probably have both read it. So I'm calling you out, buddy. But it was one of those things where the thought was get away from the canned mass and blast email programs and really understand your buyer, whether it's from a persona perspective or individual behaviors. But how do we do this at scale? That's the nugget, right?
I mean, I think Jordan and Ryan both did a tremendous job of just like reframing and providing a lot of perspective. Like, what is your alternative? The market is the market. It is what it is, and what your life has changed. Your life still has these pain points in their home, and this home is the right time because it's the right home for you. Those
Kevin has his hand up.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we actually have a comment that's pretty interesting from Daniel. And I'm going to forewarn you that I, as a salesperson myself, I see some slippery slope in this question, or his comment. Yeah, the objective should be to vet prospective buyers as efficiently as possible. If a salesperson knows the prospect meets the buying criteria, they will provide great service. It's the time wasters that make salespeople jaded. And my comment to that is that because I've seen people do it on multi $10,000 plus deals on motorcycles. I don't know if you've ever lost a deal on a $40,000 motorcycle because you misjudged somebody thinking they weren't a buyer. Trust me, there's some grubby ass people that buy Harley Davidsons that walk in with 40, 50 grand in their pocket ready to ride home on their bike. So I'd be kind of careful with prejudging and pre-qualifying outside of financial qualification that buyer.
I think you have to earn that information. Every great salesperson earns the right to ask the questions that they need to understand where that buyer is emotionally. And if you're not doing that work, then you're not a great salesperson. If you're not,
you're saying you need to ask and have the conversation. I think what you're saying, you're agreeing with Kevin that careful, don't assume when somebody walks in that you know, but you're saying you need to earn the right to have a conversation.
Yeah, you need to do your job. I mean, jaded, then you won't be a salesperson for long.
You're gonna ask questions and the customer is just gonna, blow you off. They're not gonna want to answer real answers of what's going on in their situation if that's what you're doing.
Yeah. If I can speak to that for a second, I mean, it's all about being curious, and you've got to learn how to ask a really great question and know where you're going to take the conversation. Quite frankly, I think a lot of things that you learn in life come from your experiences. And way back 2005, 2006, when I first got into the industry, I had an opportunity in a model home. It was a slow day. Had a buyer come in, and the typical conversation was, I'm just looking for design ideas, right? I didn't have anything going on. So I was like, all right, cool. Let's do it. Let's go look. Maybe I'll learn something about design and we can kind of talk through all of that. Well, it was just, I don't know, 30 minutes. There wasn't anything going on. He left. He said he had a great time. He was going to go design his home that he already bought. Well, 6 months later, someone came in and said that his buddy had come in looking for design ideas. And because of his experience at the model home, he said, hey, you should go check out this neighborhood. So you really got to be shy about, blowing people off. And I say that lightly, but you really need to be aware of the impact you can make on someone, even if they're not going to be purchasing a home from you, because my God, it'll come back.
Mm-hmm. And I also think the way that you ask questions, you've all talked, and you haven't all used this word, but you've all talked about the importance of listening and asking the why, right? So I'll share an experience years ago. I had the privilege of touring 5 different markets. Phoenix was one of them, and touring more than 60 points of sale. Some of them were communities that I represented. I was the chief marketing officer of a large development company. Some of them were our own communities, and a number of them were competitive communities. A colleague and I walked into 60 plus points of sale from Phoenix, DC, Houston, Virginia, and Seattle, Washington. I was asked my name once. 60 different experiences. The 3 top questions I was asked every single time. Ready? What's your purchase price? How many square feet? I don't even know what the hell that means. And how many bedrooms do you want? And at the end of that experience, I came away and concluded that we were selling house by the pound, just like you buy hamburger in a supermarket. Nobody once asked me, how do you spend your free time? What do you like to do on the weekends? What kind of family are you? Do you have pets? Do you have kids? Not once. And I was asked my name once. Like, that's horrifying. Mm-hmm. Kevin, do you have a follow-up to that? I can see you leaning back thoughtfully.
No, I was doing a little bit of not as active listening as I should have, because I have one solid question for all of our panelists, and including you, Terry. And when I first met Jordan, I was like, that dude has got an infectious smile. He literally approaches people as if he is a human hug. And don't blush on me, dude, because you are this guy. You are that guy. And you're like, we're cut from the same cloth. I walk into a room, I'm a hugger, man. I'm the guy that's like, let me find out more of the story about what you're looking for in life, and how can I be there to assist you. I've always been a relationship salesperson myself. But I'm curious, what individual thing, not for your customers, but for your internal customers, your coworkers, your subordinates, for some of you that own their companies, for your employees. What one human quality do you infuse into your equation every single day on a personal level with your internal customers? Can we start with Elena, since your head shaking, and maybe go to Kate?
Yeah, yeah. Part of our manifesto that Terry helped me write and edit is bring your whole self to work. And it means that when you walk in the door at Garmin Homes and you're an employee, you're also somebody's partner, somebody's parent, somebody's child, a member of your community, and honoring all those different parts of who you are is important to me. Is important to me as the owner, that you walk in as a whole person and don't feel like there's any part of yourself that you have to edit to be accepted and loved and respected at Garmin Homes. And so I encourage people to talk about things that you're not supposed to talk about in other places, about about political ideas, about their family structure, and how that deviates from the normal and or typical or expected. I want to know all the pieces that you are afraid to bring to a normal place of employment. I want you to, all of those will be celebrated, and it's a safe space to do that.
Along a similar line there, what's baked into our culture is time with every manager and each of their direct reports, so that person has a sounding board, that they truly know each other. It's not just top down; it's both ways. It is a conversation that it needs to be had, so that you can bring your whole self to work. If there's something that in their weekly one-on-one, because we are very consistent with one-on-ones. We want every person to have that space to talk about, not just about the job, about what's going on in their world. If they need to talk about their cat, they can talk about their cat, because that's important to them. So,
Kate, what do you got?
So, Elena, I love you so much. I also am an owner of a family business. I run the company with my two sisters. So the line between, how much you give and care, it's blurry sometimes, right? I would say dignity. So like I mentioned at the beginning, good design, good people, that is an internal and external brand commitment. So it's an assumptive. I assume every person that I work with is a good person. So because of that, when balls get dropped and people make mistakes and things happen, it's because they're human, and it's not because they're bad people. It's because they're good people, right? So when you take that off the table, there's so much room for grace. There's so much room for development. We don't use failure language internally. We use wins and learns, because that's about development. That's how we improve. Instead of playing the blame game, we just don't have time for that. And that's modeled by our leadership, that we, at our heart, we are the model of servanthood leadership style. Leaders eat last. There's not one thing my leaders will ask their staff to do that they're not willing to do themselves. Not one.
Amen.
And me personally, I was sitting at the front desk a couple months ago, because you know what? We had a PTO overlap and it was fun. So it's just, there is no ego. Like, what a gift, what a cool industry. Come on, we're not solving climate change today. We're making beautiful spaces. What a gift that this is our gig. And so if that's your intention and that's what you bring to work, man, that's how creativity happens, right?
Who's next?
Gordon.
Yeah, I'll step to it. So one of the things that we've really focused a lot on, our VP of Sales, Chris Hartley. Nobody knows who that guy is. And Meredith Chapman, our counterpart here as an area sales manager. We've spent a lot of time building culture. Checking your ego at the door is the name of the game, right? And just making sure that there is a firm reverence for our job and what we do, and we take that to heart. Speaking to those who are internal customers, let's speak to our counterparts at the corporate office. Working for a big builder, it's very important for us to get in and have conversations with the head of our purchasing department, VPs of construction, making sure that we're not all operating within silos, but we're all working together, and that we're all on the same page and going the same direction.
I love that. And I'll bring it home by saying that I really, really care deeply about making sure that every single person I get the honor of interacting with feels seen and heard and walks away from that engagement and interaction with something positive and tangible they can implement in their world, whether it's personal or professional. And I used to always measure myself. The results mattered, bottom line mattered, sales numbers mattered, all that's important. But at the end of the day, if people who've worked with me or around me or beside me or in any manner can say to themselves, my life is better because I had a little bit of Terry in it, I've done my job. That makes me happy.
Yeah, it's all about connecting and being there for them when you need to be.
Yeah, totally. Kevin or Greg, any other kind of last kind of comments or questions you want us to consider? This is great.
Yeah, Terry, I was just kind of, I did a lot of listening today and learning. You guys have been great. Thank you so much for sharing. We came here with this idea of let your human show, and I came from my own mind of that's me doing something different, right? What's my action? But what I heard today was the reality of, in reality, letting my human show is actually acknowledging the human on the other side. It's really, it's that, famous saying that a really smart person a long time ago said about treat people the way you want to be treated, and really it comes down to this idea of we don't have leads, we don't have customers, we don't have buyers, they're people, right?
Right.
They're people, and it's the emotional nature of human beings that differentiate us from the other creatures on the earth, right? Is emotion. And what's more emotional than buying a home? Right? It's one of the most emotional events that we have, and we only do it, a few times in our lives. And sometimes we get a little close to it in the industry, a little too close, because we do it a lot more often than the buyer does, right? Because we're in it. But that's what I heard today is let's just remember that the buyer is the human, right? And if we acknowledge them and respect them for that, meet them where they are in the journey, then they're going to connect, and it's going to be good for all of us. Even if they don't buy, it's going to be a good engagement interaction.
100%. Well said, really well said. And I think by letting ourselves be real and letting ourselves show and letting ourselves listen more openly, and thoughtful beforehand, as Ryan said at the beginning of the call, being thoughtful about how you do that. I think that's the answer. And the technology will always improve. It's going to continue to be there to support and make us smarter. I think it's how we use the outputs from that to make sure that we can connect with people where and how they want to be met. Really well said.
All right, Kevin, I think we get to have the really fun stuff now.
We are. We're going to do one really fun thing. Well, three really fun things. We're giving away a Retro 51 pen. Some of you are big deal pen recipients, and this is a big deal pen. We're going to be giving away the house that it is a big deal pen. There's actually a story behind that. There's the house that she built activity book, and a house that she built book itself. We're firm believers in that program and where that money is channeling to, and the Girl Scout program. I mean, everything about it. The house that was built 100% by women. Outhouse is 100% behind inclusivity. So big thing. And then of course our grand prize. So I went in backwards order. So this is third place. House that she built is second place, and our grand prize, which is right now at the early bird pricing of $500, paid entry into our summit in September 21st, 22nd. Here's how you can get it. I put my email in the chat. It is kevinw@outhouse.net. You need to shoot me. If you want to win that prize, you need to shoot me an email. The first one is how many hyphenated people are on this call today? How many hyphenated names? The second question is spell Terry Slavic Suyuki. You can cheat if you want to by looking at the screen right now, but you better copy and paste while you can, because you got to spell it correctly or you're losing a point. And number three, what is your fear on being 100% genuine human? Because there is a fear in that. So if you have a personal fear, if you go with reckless abandon like I do, where you're just like, hey, you don't like me, you might be one of that 20% of the people that aren't going to like me just because of this. Or you could be the 80% of the people that fall deeply and infatuated in love with this. Who knows? I don't know. But I want to know your fear. What is your personal fear? So how many hyphenated names? Spell Terry Slavic Suyuki and hit me with your personal fear on being a human in the work environment.
What if your fear is essay questions, Kevin?
Then and it can be brief. It doesn't have to be anything deep or anything, but just something brief.
Or hyphenated names.
There you go. Or checking into hotel rooms with hyphenated names.
Yes, that's another one. So if you send me that, email me. I'm only going to accept emails for about the next 30 minutes or so after this thing shuts down. So I guess that would be, we'll put a 30-minute timer on it. You have to send me that email, kevinw@outhouse.net, and I will send to everybody that responds the results as well as a list of who won the prizes.
And remember, it's .net. Remember, it's .net. Don't make a typo and miss out. Okay?
kevinw@outhouse.net.
Great.
And it's not to pump your name on a list and put you in an automated email blast.
You're sure?
Although no, it doesn't. It doesn't really. I use the inbound emails as just a way to say, hey, here's who won. Thanks for participating.
I'm just kidding.
Terry,
Great.
any final words parting with us?
Oh, no, I think one thing I will say is that don't be afraid of research either. Don't be afraid of reaching out and asking your customers and just spending a little time with them. You don't need to spend $50,000 on a big, intense survey. You know, you can take 5 or 10 people out for coffee or have a phone conversation. I know, Ryan, you guys do this geniusly. So I think that's really important. Like, just ask the question and listen, and you'll be surprised about the things you learn. So this has been a great honor, a great conversation. It's not without, it's not without really recognizing that you all spent time with us today, your most precious commodity. And we hope that we made it fun, interesting, innovative. And I know I speak for everybody on this call that if there's something we said or you want to reach out and have more conversation, every single person here would more than welcome it. So thank you so much for giving us your greatest asset, your time. And Kevin and Greg, thanks for making it super fun. I think this was a great conversation.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, everybody, for attending today. We appreciate you. I'm Kevin Weitzel with Outhouse.
I'm Greg Bray with Blue Tangerine.
Thank you and have a fantastic day.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.